Okay, so I'm going to have a conversation with David Zuckerman, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I'm Claude DeLucia, and this is Senator Zuckerman. Glad to come to Bennington.
Nice to see you, Claude. Thanks for having me today.
This is our new studio. You're one of the first to use it.
Great.
So, and we also go on YouTube, and we're throughout the state.
Oh, great.
So what I had is, well, I'll do a brief introduction, but what I had is some questions. I'll go through the list, and then we'll deal with them individually. How's that?
Whatever works.
So what we have is I was looking for what your vision was for the future of Vermont long term, and what we could do now to get to there. And how has Bernie's national campaign affected politics in Vermont? And if elected, what your top priorities would be. And maybe an update on the GMO labeling and the cannabis legislation and legalization. And you know, there's a Vigil tonight. I don't know if you'll be in town, but I just mentioned it to you. You can comment on that.
Okay.
So I'll just do a brief introduction. Senator Zuckerman has been a senator for Chittenden County since elected in 2012. Serves as vice chair on the Agriculture Committee and also on the Education Committee. In the Vermont House for 14 years, it included 4 years on the chair of the Agricultural Committee. And the founder and co-owner of Full Moon Farm. Where is that anyway?
Well, our farm is in Heinsberg. I started in the Intervale in Burlington and renting a little bit of land with about 2 acres of production back in 1999, and have grown the farm to today where we own 150 acres in Heinsberg. We produce about 25 acres of vegetables, cover crop another 20 acres, hay a bunch of the rest of the land, and grow straw. And then we also raise pigs. We raise about 50 pigs and about 1,000 chickens.
Wow.
So we have about 10 employees in the summer and 3 year-round.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, so what is your vision for Vermont long term?
Well, I'm going to give you a little more background to your introduction there, because along with the 4 years that I served as chair of agriculture, I actually served on agriculture in the House for 6 years total. I served on the Natural Resources and Energy Committee for 6 years. I also served on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the taxing and fees and how the state generates revenue committee for 2 years. So a decently wide range between that and my time in the Senate now with agriculture and education. I've touched on a range of issues on different committees over time. But, you know, my vision in Vermont is a place where everybody who works and participates in our society earns a livable wage and can afford their basic monthly bills. You know, safe, clean, affordable housing, food and shelter, healthcare, transportation, and a good education system. That's a very broad definition of what a good future in Vermont would be, in my opinion. And there's a number of ways that things we need to change to get there, and they're not overnight solutions, because frankly, some of the problems that we've gotten into have been a ramification of a couple decades worth of bad policy, whether it be national policy started under Ronald Reagan, where they kept cutting taxes on the wealthy and cutting funds to the states to support things like education or transportation infrastructure or workers' rights, but also state level issues. So, you know, my vision is that in 2 years as Lieutenant Governor, I'm not necessarily going to solve all of our problems, but I'm going to address our problems looking at not just solving the symptom, but solving what's the underlying issue creating that problem. So, for instance, just last night in a forum, we were talking about dentists and access to dental care for people.
Okay.
Well, we have a couple different issues there. One is we don't have enough dentists, we don't have enough dental hygienists, we don't have enough people to take care of the teeth we have. But we also aren't eating food that's leading towards healthy oral health.
Okay.
You know, we need to make it more available, and Vermont's been doing this better than most places, for our kids and for adults to eat healthier produce and healthier food so that we're not constantly consuming sugar and just destroying our teeth all the time. You know, when it comes to healthcare, we need to move towards a universal primary care system so that everyone has access to preventative medicine and regular checkups, so we don't end up with longer costs down the way. When you get a cut, say, well, I'm not going to deal with that, I'll try and keep it clean myself. Then you get an infection, you got to go to the emergency room. It costs everybody more money.
Yeah.
So the whole lens that I view our future in Vermont is one towards looking at the causes of the problems, not just dealing with the symptoms at the end of our challenges in our state. So to me, I really see and would like to see us build our rural agricultural community, both agriculture and forestry, rebuild the vibrancy of that, not only because you could have more people living in our rural communities, which would mean more folks for the volunteer fire squads, more folks living in the communities, and really rebuilding that community spirit that Vermont has, but also including things like expanding broadband into our rural communities so that young families who want to live in Vermont also can run software businesses out of their homes, or with 3 to 5 employees. The small business scenario in Vermont is really the backbone of our economy, whether it be agriculture, small software companies, consulting businesses, whatever it be, value-added businesses. And so if we can expand that, we have a real future.
All right. And how about Bernie's campaign?
Well, Bernie's campaign has been absolutely amazing. He has embodied so much of the hope and vision for not only what Vermont can be, but what our country can be when we actually work together to move forward on solving our community problems. Obviously, we're in a time right now where so many people are struggling, and they're really frustrated with the system and establishment. You look at Bernie's success, you look at the person who won the Republican primary, I can't even say his name, I'm so sad about it, but they're both of them are anti-establishment candidates. And I think this presidential election cycle and Bernie's incredible work has really been about reinvigorating folks that the system can work, but people have to get involved and engaged and push the establishment to do the right thing. The establishment isn't going to just work for ordinary people without being pushed by ordinary people. And it's been very exciting to see that energy, his incredible success, and I hope to emulate that here in Vermont. Say what you believe, be out there pushing the issues, and I think a lot of supporters will consider that and when they go in to vote.
And the GMO labeling?
Well, we're just 3 weeks out from when Vermont's law fully goes into effect on July 1st. Not everything will be properly labeled as of that day. Some companies have product stream that's working its way through the system. And as a state, both the Attorney General and the legislature have given about a 6-month reprieve from any kind of legal action if a company is not quite yet fully meeting the law. And the legislature at the end of the session actually gave reprieve for those companies from what's called private rights of action or citizen lawsuits until that old stock runs through the shelves. But as of July 1st, products in Vermont and in many instances across the country from some of these producers will start being labeled that they contain or may contain genetically engineered ingredients. The price of food really is not going to change. The boogeyman fear that many people sort of promulgated, particularly the industry, is really not going to come out to be true because actually companies change their labels all the time. If you look at a Coca-Cola label, they've got a Christmas label, and they've got a President's Day label, and they've got a Valentine's Day label. Companies change their labels all the time. I run a business. We print labels for our farm. We typically print 6 months to a year worth of labels at a time because we're pretty small. But this law has been in place now for a year and a half for companies to be ready to get ready for the law. And changing a label is a very small cost in the grand scheme of the cost of a product. So the good news is the information will be there. Consumers can make a decision that this does have GMO, but it's all that I can afford right now. I'm going to buy it. Or, I'm able to buy this other thing. I'm going to go for the non-GMO product. That's up to consumers to decide, and that's what the right to know is all about.
And the cannabis legalization?
Well, that was a challenging piece this last year. Senator Sears here in Bennington County originally was very cautious about the topic. And over time, as he learned more about it, and I think this is true for many Vermonters as well, unfortunately not enough House lawmakers had the time to really learn the issue. I was hoping the Speaker would have initiated the issue earlier, but he didn't. And therefore, the House members really weren't ready for it when it came over. But Senator Sears really looked at the issues, really looked at the underlying myths, the underlying realities, the myths about the sky going to fall or tremendous boost in youth access and use. Vermont is one of the highest youth use rates today. Vermont right now has people driving today with cannabis in their system. The reality is all the fears that people are saying, oh my God, people are going to drive high. Young people are going to have access. That all exists today. And the sooner we change the system to where we discuss it honestly and where the place to buy it is at a store where there can be information about the health risks. Drug dealers don't tend to give you health risk information when they're selling you drugs. we can actually move forward in a more rational conversation around cannabis. And on top of that, we can bring this huge underground economy in Vermont above board, make it legitimate. Those folks will pay their proper income taxes, and actually will probably have a boost in tourism and other revenue generating opportunities by people coming to Vermont to go skiing when they might otherwise have gone to Maine or New Hampshire. And so, whether it's skiing, whether it's outdoor recreation in the summer, there are a lot of people that are nearby Vermont from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, who I think would be more than willing to come to Vermont, rent a hotel room or rent a house for a week. I think there's a lot of ways that it'll actually stimulate the economy far outside straight up cannabis. And hopefully in this upcoming election, we will see action on that. And I think if people vote for me in this lieutenant governor's race, that would be a real signal to many of my House colleagues to say, the majority of Vermont does support this. And one of the reasons why I don't think they heard as much from their constituents in support is because if you're a teacher today, or you're a doctor today, or you're a professional in some other way, and you came out and said, I support legalizing cannabis, there would have been huge stigma towards you. If you were a teacher, someone would have said, oh my God, you're a teacher. You can't be teaching our kids if you're pro-pot. Well, it isn't about being whether you're pro-cannabis or anti-cannabis. It's about pro-rational managed regulation in our society. And so, to me, unfortunately, folks didn't hear from their constituents as much because they were afraid to speak out. But people can speak out with their vote because that's an anonymous situation. And if I'm elected, then clearly people across the state will recognize that cannabis is a supported legislation to move forward in the coming biennium.
All right, thank you. All right, what do you see as the biggest challenges for you?
In what? In the campaign or serving in office or
in the years you've served?
Well, in the years I've served, I've often been someone who pushes the envelope. I often stick my neck out. I actually grew up, there was a poster on the kitchen wall growing up saying, behold the turtle who makes progress only when it sticks its neck out. And my mom was always a fighter, and I guess I just have always been sticking my neck out on issues, sometimes before the political establishment was ready for them. So whether it was marriage equality, where I voted for marriage during civil unions, but then kept introducing marriage legislation until we passed it in 2009, whether it was end-of-life choices, where I introduced legislation and again pushed for that legislation for years before it crossed the finish line, cannabis reform, and of course GMO labeling. I worked on that for 15 years. I was a leader across the country, much less Vermont, in introducing regulatory language around GMOs. And so sometimes a challenge for me is sticking the issue out, knowing that in general the public tends to support it, but that the political body and the political establishment isn't always ready. And that can be real frustrating because you think, the people are ready for this. Why are you taking so long? So that's a challenge. On the other hand, it's very rewarding because eventually when these laws come to pass, it's because people have participated in the process. And through my work introducing the bill and working with those folks all over the state to engage them in the process, call their legislators, come to Montpelier, that's very rewarding. So my challenge has also led to great personal satisfaction and rewards to empowering people to get involved in the system.
Okay, all right. And well, I guess, there's a vigil tonight at around 7. I don't know if you're going to be in town, but maybe you can comment on...
Sure, hold on one second. Well, we've all, I think, been meditating and thinking and grieving on the tragedy of the homophobic assault in Orlando. And, nobody who is going to a place that is safe for them should face this kind of fear, risk, and ultimately loss of life. And I've attended a couple of vigils, one in Montpelier a couple evenings ago, and then I got up to Burlington for the very big one there. And I think for all of us to reflect on the loss, the sadness, the grief is really important, but also to reinvigorate all of our passion and our souls for justice and safety and community and a better future. And I think a lot of people are coming together both to allow the appropriate time for anger and grief and frustration, but also how can we work to prevent these things from happening in the future. Whether this assailant was challenged in their own identity which has been being discussed, or whether it was an issue around radical faith in a particular religion. I think it's very important that we work to make it so people don't go to those places. You know, many religions and faiths stand up for incredibly good things around community and caring for the poor and working together to make everybody's life better. But there are these radical factions of almost every religion that become so fanatical, and people grasp onto that when they're really desperate. And so we need to try to make it so that nobody gets to that desperate place where they're going to carry out this kind of act, whether that's economic justice or spiritual justice and freedoms, personal freedoms. We need to make sure to keep moving towards a welcoming society so that people who are facing these challenges feel love and embracement and comfort and community that can help them through their difficult times, so that they don't go out and cause these tremendous tragedies and pain to other people. If I can get to the vigil tonight, I will try. Partly I'm in Bennington because we've got a debate/community gathering for the race for lieutenant governor, and the timing might conflict, but maybe we'll pause from that to be able to come out for the vigil, because I think it's very important that we come together and see our community and our spirit in coming together.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Senator Zuckerman.
Well, thank you, Claude. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak.
And I'm glad you're here in Bennington. And next time you come back, let me know and we can do another show.
Well, absolutely. And I just want to let people know, if they want to learn more information, they can go to the website Zuckerman4VT.com. That's Zuckerman, FORVT.com. And you can learn more about me and also connect with the campaign. I also want to just finish by saying that the election actually starts in just a couple weeks. All of July, folks can go into their town clerk and vote at any time, but the last day to vote is August 9th. So please make sure, if you want to engage in the race in the various primaries around the state for statewide office, including mine, or your local primaries, please make sure to vote in July or by August 9th. And also, you can register to vote at the Secretary of State's website anytime. So please do that soon so that you have the ability and authority to go vote when you're ready to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a conversation with David Zuckerman, candidate for Lieutenant Governor.